let's look at one more workflow here where we're going to add on some checks and approvals. So now, just like the last example where we did a git commit and a git push, we're going to do the same thing, except here we've actually inserted a reviewer. So this reviewer is going to get a request. They're going to review any changes that are happening to the algorithm, and then they'll need to approve these changes before a new version of the model gets published. So it's a great way to map any manual or automated kind of checks that you have within your organization to how you move your models to production. So let's take a look at that workflow now. So we'll go over to another algorithm, same idea, it's a Scikit-Learn algorithm. We have CI/CD automation built into this algorithm, but we've also inserted some checks, and we'll take a look at what those checks look like along the way. So first thing is, let's go to the source code for this algorithm. And again, this is hosted in an external Git repo. In GitHub in this case, you can also use GitHub Enterprise. Same idea where we have a calling function. So what I want to do is I've cloned this repository to my local machine. So let's take a look at opening that up. And this is the algorithm. So I want to do the same thing. I want to switch from model version A to model version B. So I'm going to go to navigate to the right directory here. And there we are. So now I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. I'm going to commit these changes. I'll put change model version as the commit message and do a git push. Now, in this case, something different is going to happen because we've actually added a protected branch. We say you cannot push to the main branch. Instead, you have to form a pull request. So this is all part of better change management as you move models to production. So let me do that. Let's check out a new branch and we'll say update version of model, random forest. So now I'm going to do a git push, and now it should push my changes to a branch on this repository. So let's take a look at that, and there are our changes. I'll go ahead and create a pull request, and let's go ahead and do that. So now I've created a pull request. This is all happening on the version control side now before this can be built and published as a new version of an algorithm. So there's a couple of checks here that need to happen before this model can go into production. One is that it has to be reviewed manually by a reviewer that has write access to this repository. Another check that we'll drill into in a second is actually checking for a risk CSV file. So this is just a synthetic file for this example, but this might be some kind of metadata that you require all of your models to have before they go to production. So both of these checks are going to fail at the moment, and I'm unable to move my model to production until I fix those issues. So let's go ahead and take a look at adding a reviewer. So first I'll add a reviewer here, and then let's make sure that that review passes first, and then we'll address this other automated check. So I'm going to switch over to a different window here, and let's go to the pull requests. And here I can see the pull request coming in, and I've switched over to this reviewer account. And so in this case, I could look at any code changes that have happened. If I see any features that have been added, anything that I need to address as part of the review, I could go ahead and do that and iterate with the algorithm developer. So let's say that I've done that and I've approved the changes and submitted my review. So now if we go back to our pull request, I'll see that I have a check and the changes have been approved, but I still have one more automated check that is failing. So let's take a look at what's going on there. So here I've just inserted an arbitrary workflow in my build that says there has to be a risk.csv file in the repository or the check will not pass. This is a great place to enforce any kind of metadata or approval kind of spreadsheets that you're checking along the way to make sure that's included as part of your algorithm. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll just create a file here. We'll say riskscore.csv, and we'll insert some information in there just for the purposes of this demo. So I'll go ahead and add that risk file to our repository, commit the changes, and then we will push this to that branch. So we should see that update here in a second. There we go. So now the automated check is going to rerun. And once that gets a green check mark, then I'll be able to move forward with my productionization of my model, right? So just to recap, we made a change. We had to open it on a branch and create a pull request. There were a couple of things that had to happen. A manual review by a reviewer had to be done before I can merge these changes, and then a automated scan happened, and it was checking to make sure that I had included a risk CSV file. So now that those two conditions are satisfied, I can go here and I can merge my changes. And now those are going to get merged into the main branch of our algorithm. And again, if I go to the builds tab, this algorithm is also hooked up to CI/CD with GitHub Actions, right? So it's going to, now that the changes have been approved, it's going to build a new version and publish a new version only after those checks and verifications have been done along the way. So in a few moments, this will go from version 5 to version 6, and then we will have our new approved version up and running. So while that's finishing up, I'll go back here and recap. So if I back up just a couple of steps, first we looked at the manual build and publish workflow, where we committed changes to a Git repository that made up an algorithm. Then we manually built and published a model to make that available in Algorithmia. We then added in some automation with CI/CD systems to do an automated build and publish. So really at that point we were just doing a git commit and a git push, and it would end up as a new API version in Algorithmia. And the third step was we used automation, except we inserted a couple of checks. One was manual review by a reviewer who had to approve these changes, and the second was an automated scan for a certain file and metadata. That being said, we looked at one specific example here. There are a lot of different options you can use along the way with Algorithmia. We take an integration first approach to all of the systems out there that you're already using as part of your data science and ML development and pushing to production. So the first one is the Git repository. Here we showed making use of the built-in Git server. You can also use GitHub and GitHub Enterprise as places to host your algorithm code. For the reviewer step, here we had a manual reviewer. You could also have automated scans for certain metadata or security scans that need to happen along the way. And third, we showed the CI/CD system. We were using GitHub Actions. You can also use things like Jenkins, GitLab CI, Bamboo CI. We have a lot of recipes for these kinds of systems. But ultimately, we want to fit in the right pieces that you're already using on your side, but help you streamline that together in a reusable deployment pipeline that everyone's following as they move models to production.